Welcome back to Rule 8 Politics, where we always tell the truth, or at least we don't lie. My name is Jeremy Sammons. I am joined today here with Zachary Sacker. Today is November the 8th. It is Sunday. So, yesterday, as I'm sure you're all aware, the election was decided and it was called for Joe Biden. So, Zach, how you feeling today?
I feel very well. I'm glad it's all over. I feel like this election was a marathon, and it's finally over. It's time to recuperate and get ready for the next fight, I suppose. January. Um, the really interesting results, which I'm sure we'll get to, but basically Joe Biden won, as you just said, but also Republicans gained seats in Congress. It looks like they may hold on to the Senate, even though they did lose at least one, possibly two seats. But they 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 looks like they're going to hold on to the Senate. That will be decided in January. We'll get into that in a little bit, but they gained seats in the House. People voted for a return to normalcy, for gridlock. I think they don't want, you know, Trump stoking the flames, but they also don't want chaos in our
Right.
streets. People don't want to defund the police and all this crazy stuff that people to the left of Joe are trying to push. So I think we have eternal normalcy, stability, and that's a good thing right now. We need to catch our breaths.
Yeah, I think I was a little intellectually dishonest in how I was approaching this election kind of nihilistically. Like I didn't allow myself to really care, right? Like I kind of told myself that regardless of the outcome, like it didn't matter if Biden won, it didn't matter if Trump won. But when it finally got called, I really I I realized how much this election did matter to me and how relieved I was when Joe won. Um, I think I think it doesn't really change how I feel about Joe Biden and his administration, what they're bringing to the table. But my God, I am so relieved at at the outcome, and I will allow myself to feel good about it.
Mhm. Yeah, Joe Biden represents the establishment. He is as establishment as it gets. He's been in office of one form or another for, I believe, 47 years. It's a long ass time.
Yeah,
Um, the establishment is what gave us Donald Trump. Um, Jobs being shipped overseas and people losing their livelihoods. We have massive, drug addiction problems in this country, and I a lot of that has to do with bad trade deals and whatnot. A lot of the reasons why Trump was elected in the first place, they still exist, and I don't necessarily think the establishment is the answer to that, but we collectively needed to catch our breath for a sec and try to figure out what is the right direction for this country. I think Trump kind of made us all aware that there are some very uh, uh, large problems that exist that need the attention of the government, but Trump didn't necessarily have the correct answers. I hope Joe Biden, Joe Biden has the chance to be one of the greatest presidents ever. Okay. Donald Trump had the same chance when he first took office, to be fair. Um, Trump didn't live up to that. Joe Biden hasn't, his term hasn't started yet. He has that chance, he has that opportunity. And I think what people voted for was stability, as I've been saying, but also compromise. They want the two sides to work together. This was not a big blue wave. People were not voting overwhelmingly for left wing policies. They were voting for, come on, guys, work together, lower the temperature a little bit. And that's really what I'm hoping we get. Um, but I don't think we're going to see the kinds of fundamental transformation that I do think we may need to address some of the serious problems that got Donald Trump elected. So long term, I don't think you know, a Joe Biden presidency is going to be you know, all that great. We still have those long term trends that resulted in someone like Donald Trump, but in the short term, things were getting really chaotic here, and we were able to at least hit the brakes and collectively catch our breath.
So, how much voter fraud do you think occurred this election cycle?
You know, I don't think much. I mean, there's maybe, you know, maybe there was some. There probably was some, but enough to change the outcome. No, you know, Trump is grasping at straws, and I think a lot of I think the concerns of a lot of people are, myself included, unfortunately, are going to be proven correct. I think Trump is going to do whatever he can to stay in the White House, and we're really going to get pushed to the brink within the next few weeks, the next few months, as to say, I should say, going up to Inauguration Day. Um, you know, everyone right now may be parading and partying in the streets despite COVID, but I don't think this is over. This is not over. We have, there's more to come.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it probably will be 2 weeks. Like if things are really going to explode, like people expect them to, or I should say some people expect them to, that will probably be in the trajectory of like 2 weeks to a month from now. That'll be if, especially if, I mean, I can't think of a scenario of where the Trump administration actually brings a case that reaches the Supreme Court that is valid and the court rules in Trump's favor. But if Trump somehow does steal the election away from the Electoral College to maintain power, that is when it explodes. Like I don't see. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think Biden could be the one that could instigate for this to be pushed over the cliff, right? Like I don't.
Right.
I don't think he really has the, because he doesn't have the power. He's not the one in office. You know, he's not the one that has to concede. Trump could really, spin this whole thing out of control. Even let's say, I guess if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration and he decides to not go with the Supreme Court, you know, and try to defy their ruling, that's when it blows up. And that's where we enter, like, that'd be uncharted territory. We really don't know what would happen in that scenario.
Yeah. I mean, the Supreme Court has made its decision. Now let them enforce it. I mean, that was a Jackson quote. And Jackson, as we know, is one of Trump's role models. He's one of his favorite presidents, if not his favorite. I could easily see Trump just saying, screw you. I won. If you count all the legal votes, if you count the illegal votes, Joe Biden wins, but you can't count illegal votes, you know, and yeah, I could see him really just making things spin out of control. You know, we're speculating here. I mean, hopefully this doesn't happen. But I mean, there's a chance that the Democrats could pursue legal charges against Trump once he's out of office. So, I mean, Trump may be thinking if he has to leave the White House, he's probably going to jail. So, at that point, why not just give it all he can? You know, why not fight tooth and nail? You know, and I don't know. I can even see him continuing to, like, I guess now we're getting into post inauguration day. But I could see Trump just continuing to hold rallies and pretend he's the president and continuously campaigning to be president. And
yeah, you're right. You know, I never even thought of that possibility. Yeah. I had not. Yeah,
I mean, the guy loves the rally. Mm-hmm. He loves rallying. I mean, that's, you know, It's what he does. It's
Yeah,
I could see him.
that's such a fascinating thing to consider. If if everything goes Biden's way, including the Supreme Court and all these rulings, and Trump still pretends he's a president and holds a rally, I wonder how many thousands of people would show up, because it would be numbered in the thousands.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Trump, he likes to say that he started a movement, and I kind of agree with that. There are fanatical Trump supporters out there, and he's a showman. They love going to his rallies. They're fun to watch. I've watched some on TV. They're amusing, and he's a salesman. And what better way to sell hats and shirts than holding events? So he's going to continue to do that. And what that's going to do is, even though he's out of office, it's going to kind of solidify his grip on the Republican Party, because he's going to be able to basically sick the dogs on whatever Republican who he doesn't like.
yeah,
So I mean, if there's a Republican running for Senate in Arizona, and Trump doesn't like that person, he'll support a primary challenger, just as an example. And Trump's got the attention. He's got. I mean, that could change. Twitter could block him after he's out of office, because their rules are they don't. I mean, they've been censoring Trump. They've been putting notifications around it, but they won't ban public officials.
right.
Once Trump's out of office, if he continues to tweet things that aren't correct, they very well and probably will ban him. I actually bet he gets banned within his first week. But I mean, he still has he's got his own internal means of communicating. And if anything, it's possibly more dangerous with him not being on Twitter for us all to see, but being able to communicate with his supporters directly. But
yeah,
so I'm thinking yeah. Go ahead. You're good. I was talking too long.
That's not, you're fine, man. Yeah, the campaign has hammering their support base for donations. So like today, it's been like every 90 minutes you get a new notification saying like this bullshit about your donation. We've matched 1,000%. That's what they say. Every fucking text message will match it 1,000%. Which it's completely.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, here we go. It's we are demanding a recount in Wisconsin immediately. President Trump is calling on you to give us the resources to fight back. 1,000% match. We must protect the election. Oh, no, this is from Don Jr. We must protect the election. My father is calling on you. Oh shit, just blanked out on me. I'm sorry. My father is calling on you to help bolster our crucial election defense fund. 1,000% match. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you, it's every 90 minutes.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this election really is not over. There's going to be court cases and litigation. We have to see how it goes. I don't see. I'm not a legal expert, but I don't see Trump being able to pull this off. He would have to. The results would have to change in multiple states, right? This is not just he flips one state and all of a sudden he's got enough electoral votes. It would have to be multiple states. He would have to overturn the the way the votes were counted, basically.
Right. And if there was all this,
I don't see it happening.
No, there's no way. And if there was all this election fraud, we wouldn't have. I say we, the Democrats, wouldn't have lost seats in the House. We would have won the Senate. Like if we're gonna fucking rig an election, you would really rig it in your favor all the way down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was, you had a lot of the never Trumper type Republicans out there who in 2016 might have voted third party or wrote in someone else's name or didn't vote. given the polarization that we have today, there were much less third party and independent voters. Most people picked a side, and a lot of those there were a lot of Republicans who ended up voting for Joe Biden and then Republicans down ballot. That's what I really think happened. Um, but Donald Trump did earn more votes, a lot more votes this time around than he did in 2016. His
Yeah.
movement did grow, and it grew among non-white voters mostly, which is very interesting. The last people, if you listen to the mainstream narrative, Trump's the racist, he's the boogeyman and all this. Why did more Black and Latino people go for Trump this time around versus in 2016? That's something that the Republican Party really needs to look at.
Yeah, it's incredible. At the when I was looking at those metrics, the only sector in which he underperformed was white men. Yeah, he overperformed with blacks, overperformed with Hispanics, overperformed with LGBTQ. I mean, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Like that in itself is a victory that the Conservative Party needs to figure out what they're going to do to how to retain that.
Yeah. But they need to retain those white men that defected. And you look at the states that really put it over the top for Joe Biden. It was the same states that basically won it for Trump in 2016: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Those Rust Belt states that traditionally were Democratic states, but somehow Trump flipped them in 2016 with having that working class message. That is something that we're facing, our demographics are changing in this country, and that's kind of going against what the Republican Party is for the most part. But if they are able to have a working class message and, win in those Rust Belt areas, the Republican Party would have a winning message moving forward. If you replace Trump with somebody who doesn't lie, who doesn't, use hyperbole all the time, who actually relies on facts and data, but has a working class message, that's a winning message, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's something that both the Democrats and the Republicans need to figure. Both parties, in order to win, need to be working class parties, giving the wealth disparity in this nation right now. You can't just be a party for the rich elites, because there's not that many of them. Most people are towards the bottom, the middle bottom. And when an election is based on whoever has the most votes, theoretically, you got to be targeting the bulk of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think who you sound like when you talk about those subjects, who you sound like most like to me is Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is the senator in my state, Missouri, but he's got an incredibly polished, populist message that I think perfectly kind of represents what Trumpism was, but he actually understood the ramifications of like what you can actually do when you wield that level of power. Like Trump came into office and he basically just blew it because he didn't know what he was doing. But I think someone like Howell, let me say this. I think the three people that are going to shape the future of the Republican Party, well, two for sure. That'll be Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, and I think the third one is Nikki Haley. I think that's like the three. I think that's the three people to pay attention to, and in terms of like what direction the party goes.
That's interesting. I think Donald Trump is still going to play a very central role to it, unfortunately. And there's going to be this battle, I think, between the Trump Republicans and non-Trump Republicans. Basically what we've been having, except Trump's going to be out of office. and fully focused on campaigning. Essentially, I think he's going to start campaigning already for 2024, which he could run again.
Yeah.
Either him or if not him, it will be a Trump surrogate. Either one of his sons or Ivanka, Jared Kushner, even, or someone else that Trump wants to run. And I think that's going to be his end game. It's just maintain his grip on his supporters on that part of the Republican Party. I would like to see somebody else really become the leader of the Republican Party and kind of move away from Trumpism, at least the negative aspects of it. Keep that working class message and appeal. Just, lose, I already said, the lies, the bombacity, and so on and so on. That's how the Republican Party can win.
Yes.
But
It-
they gotta declare their independence from Donald Trump. That's going to be
Yes.
very difficult to do.
Yeah. So I put together a bit of a political wish list of what I want from the Republican Party going forward. And this is all stuff that's really extracted from the Hallie campaign. Maybe it's not so explicitly said, but I really think this is like the essence of what he runs for and why this needs to be the platform that's adopted. So this is like the core of what it means. I guess so. The core of what it would be to be a Republican. So I want a party that rails against income equality. I also want a party that rejects the bias towards giant corporations and the winner-take-all concentration of wealth. Embrace the civic value of labor unions. Does something about the inaccessibility of higher education. And acknowledge the fact that their policies for free market economics and social conservatism has had a negative impact on the middle and working class. Like that should be the platform. Just like the Bush era politics failure, Reagan economics long-term failure, Trump politics economic policy failure. And I think if they just hammer that stuff home, and the winning message, like if you want to get this out and make it land with people, part of your platform, you have to acknowledge the fact that 70% of American wealth is held by the top 10% of households. The Trump tax bill resulted in large companies that have enjoyed 0% effective tax rate while making few investments in its workers. And because of that, we've lost our companies moving jobs to overseas. We've lost out on them hiring workers where they've taken that tax money and hired more workers, but at an even lower wage. And now we can't. Now that we've given them a 0% tax rate, well, then we get nothing back from it whatsoever. They were the only ones that benefited. And so while this sounds like it's coming from the left a little bit, right? But no, like this is all from the Hallie campaign, and this is why I think he's such a great candidate. And I think everything else. Everything else.
I gotta look into him more.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any other Republican that mentions the oligarchs that run this country, right? And he's the only Republican who I know who uses that term. So I think. Oh, go ahead.
He wasn't up for a re-election this time around, right?
No.
Okay. Do you know when his next election is, or re-election?
I think it'll be 2022.
Okay.
I believe, or maybe 2022 or 2024. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious.
But yeah, he's a
definitely
bad motherfucker.
Someone I got to research more.
Yeah, it's a
cool.
I disagree with the guy on a lot of cultural issues. Like he's still. Maybe he's came around, but last time I was looking at him, he was still against gay marriage, which is like it's hard to be that in 2020, right? But I think that's really kind of it. I mean, that's his stances on abortion. I mean, he's hardcore pro-life. He was
Mhm.
one of there were some I can't remember who they were trying to nominate into what particular position, but he was a Republican who voted against a Trump appointed nominee because they, in his opinion, they were not pro-life enough. So I mean, the
Wow.
guy he, he
Yeah,
is
pretty
he is
hardcore.
definitely an anti Roe v. Wade type dude, and he means it.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But I think that kind of shit can go on the back burner. Like if as long as you
Right.
have a platform that resonates with the working class people, that it correctly identifies the problems that everyday people experience and provide some kind of relief to those things. That's, I mean, that's what's right for the party. That's what's right for the country.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
But I mean, it's like,
Very interesting.
yeah, I mean, gun rights, immigration, all that shit. That's that's definitely not what matters right now, right? That's like unless you're really one of those people that think the government's going to come take your guns and open the borders in the middle of a
Mhm.
pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
that's not what people care
you
about.
know, Trump did win. Trump did win by saying we're going to build a wall.
Yeah,
So I do think the immigration nut is something that needs to be cracked somehow. You know, it's something that is a problem that definitely needs a solution. Um, I don't necessarily think that open borders is the solution. I don't really think building a wall is the solution. You know, I think the new Republican Party needs to take on the issue of immigration head on because it needs to kind of rebrand it after Trump's immigration policies, you know, and the way he framed immigration. You know, the Mexicans aren't giving us their best. They're sending rapists and murderers, and the Republican Party needs to get away from that. So, in order to do that, they need to take immigration head on and come up with some good solutions that both the left and the right can get behind.
yeah,
How do you do that? That's the question. That's the million
right.
dollar question.
I think the way you do it is, well, you lay out the facts that with lower immigration, it actually increases wages here domestically, and that if you
Mhm.
have and then you tie together immigrant, I guess, illegal immigration, you tie that together with human trafficking, and then it kind of
Yeah.
it becomes harder to defend, right? So,
Mhm.
once the argument leaves, the discussion of asylum, that's where it definitely gets trickier, right? Um,
Right.
I think,
Asylum seekers, though, you know, we definitely got to help them out. You know, we can't be, again, we're talking about the Republican Party here. The Republican Party should not be an anti refugee party. That just sounds cruel. And it's against the ideals, really, of the country. I mean, we are a country of immigrants. Everybody, unless unless you're Native American or the direct descendants of slavery, everybody in this country, their ancestors came here seeking opportunity, right? And it's no different than the people coming up from the south of the border right now. At the same time, though, we got to recognize the more immigration we have, the worse that is for wages here. Um, there needs to be a way to thread that needle where, you know, we are a welcoming country that accepts refugees, but also somewhat controls the flow of immigrants as to not cause wages the crater. Um, and it's not, you know, there's so many other reasons why wages have been stagnant basically since the 70s when you take into account inflation and and GDP growth. Wages have basically been stagnant for about 40, 50 years now. Um, it's not just immigration, though. It's offshoring, it's automation, artificial intelligence, and those factors probably play a much larger role than immigration. That's the truth. But immigration is always going to be the easiest thing to scapegoat.
mm,
And you know, if we don't address those problems and we have to make sure that, we're not going to cause an influx of immigration to kind of become the scapegoat. And that's in part of why we had Donald Trump in the first place, was because, he looked at the stagnant wages, he looked at the factories closing down, and he, connected it to immigrants, and they became a scapegoat in a way. So the Republican Party needs to thread that needle somehow.
Which
They
definitely can.
Yeah.
Oh,
I do have a possible idea.
Sure.
We should, I think the Republican Party, just bear with me here, should push for making English the national official language. But anybody who wants to come to the United States, you're more than welcome. You just have to learn the language. And that way, if you're fleeing violence in El Salvador, you have a pathway here. But we just want you to Americanize, learn the language, have a, maybe take a civics class, understand how our government works. We want people to participate in our democracy as well. And I think communication is key. People need to be able to communicate with each other. A country, I think, cannot stand long term if its people are not able to communicate. So I think everyone should know English and be able to read our founding documents, which were written in English. We need to be welcoming of other people, though. It kind of threads that needle. It also throttles it a little bit, where if you really don't want to do the work, well, you don't come then, if that's the case. But anyone who is fleeing danger can come. And I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest with you. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think I think you're correct. However, I just think that, like, especially when it comes to the issue with asylum and all that, well, then, if you're an asylum seeker, well, all that shit goes out the window, right?
Well, no, I mean, you can still, if you make an honest effort to learn the language, you could do it here. I just, I think a lot of people are concerned that, mass immigration is going to result in a changing of our overall culture. And some aspects, change is good. I freaking love Mexican food. All right. I love it. I live in Texas. We have great Mexican food here. I'm super thankful that we have a lot of Hispanics around where I live. But I think that left unchecked, people don't want their communities all of a sudden no longer speaking the language, white people essentially replaced the Native Americans in North America. And I think hindsight, that was kind of fucked up what we did, right? We totally took over all this land that was here. We displaced a ton of people. Their cultures, their burial sites are now the sites of like skyscrapers and stuff. And I think people, there's going to be a resistance to that kind of happening again, so to say. How am I? I am not trying to sound like, this sounds very, it's nationalistic in a way. I admit that. But right now in France and in many places in Europe, they have a serious problem going on where people are getting their heads cut off for showing the picture of Muhammad, right? That is a very clear cultural clash. I think it's important that when people come in, I think we should be, welcoming of people, but I also think it's important that they Americanize and adopt our values, and learning the language is a part of that, right? And I just don't, I don't think a lot of people want to become a country where all of a sudden English is the secondary language and another language has replaced it. And the very fear of replacement theory, which a lot of people on the alt right, I'm not advocating for replacement theory, but a lot of the people on the alt right think this way. And I think it was the appeal to Donald Trump to an extent, that if we don't somehow control immigration, or what I'm advocating for is just make sure people Americanize, that adds fuel to the whole replacement theory argument, which really, there is a lot of hate in there if you really, I don't know. I'm just gonna stop talking for a sec and let you respond to all the shit that I just threw out there. Man, I'm gonna get myself in trouble with this one. I know, but
I think it'll be all right. No, I think
yeah,
overall, like looking at the big picture of what you're talking about, yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
I would say that probably making English the national language is a little lower on my priority list, but yeah, I think
Mhm.
it's definitely does it matter? Yes, it absolutely does. And should it be? Probably. To the extent, like when you put it into the context of like when you frame it in such a way or a narrative that, yeah, if you don't speak the majority spoken language in this country, yeah, it does create further division, and that's something that's
Yes,
important to recognize. So
we
yeah.
want all Americans to feel like they're all part of the same big happy family, and you can't really do that when people can't communicate with each other.
Mhm.
So that's really my entire point. And I think we should open up the arms and allow more people to join that family, but they need to. I mean, it's not just English. You should have to, respect our most basic of values: free speech, the freedom to express yourself, um, liberal democracy. Okay, you got to believe in liberal democracies. Um, what else? The presumption of innocence, is an important value that I think the Republican Party really needs to stand strongly behind. I think a lot of these cultural war values, can really win the Republican Party a lot of points here. People are getting fired from their jobs left and right because of accusations and stuff. Okay, and we got to take accusations seriously. But if there's no proof to anything, right now the presumption of innocence is kind of under attack in this country. The Republican Party really should stand, as a defense against the innocent, defend the innocent. That sounds good. And you know, am I making sense here?
No, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think where having Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in office definitely does slow down the culture war a little bit. Um, if versus if we had a Bernie Sanders or a um, people like Nina Turner, elected in office, which we definitely do in the House, especially in the House, and to a certain extent the Senate. That yeah, that the radical liberal agenda that is wrapped up in the culture war is something that definitely does need to be stomped out from the party altogether,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that will be very difficult.
Yeah. And it's not even just regarding making sure future immigrants share our key values. It's also education. Um, Critical race theory is bad stuff to be teaching our kids. It's basically making our kids believe that we are this horrible place. We are an evil country, and I don't think it is true, but it can't be true because that is sowing the seeds of our destruction. Telling the youth that we're an evil place, because if it's evil, it's got to be destroyed, right? So, you know, we need to have more civics classes, and we um, really need to make sure that these First Amendment type values, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and all that is something that really needs to be taught better in our schooling systems.
Yeah, and that's the if the Republican Party, if they can effectively describe and explain why CRT and anti-racism and why those things are all like, because on the surface, I mean, how could you be against anti-racism? What's wrong with you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's until you lift under the veil and under the hood of where the problems with that type of thinking become incredibly dangerous, especially if that type of if that if we'll call it quote unquote that type of education becomes enforced, and if it's introduced
Mhm.
into the public schools, if it's introduced into a mandatory um, class you have to take in the workforce, those are some big issues that we're going to have to wrestle with here very very soon.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I
Um,
was I saw today that on day one it's supposed to the legitimacy of the document that was leaked is kind of disputed, but um, the undoing the CRT ban that Trump passed or executive order a while back to be one of the day one thing Joe Biden overrules, which yeah, I don't want that kind of shit being shoved down the throats of every
yeah.
federal employee.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Um, um, what else of the Republican Party? Tough on China. It needs to be a tough on China party,
Mhm,
because that's jobs, that's economics, that's
mhm.
bringing the factories back home, and it's also standing up for our American values abroad. I mean, they have Uyghurs locked up in camps. We got to speak out loudly against that. Um, I think that's very important. Um, the Republican Party should also be a party for a modern government, a more modern government. I mean, uh, this whole issue right now with the mail-in ballots, and Trump is calling fraud and whatnot. Um, we need to digitize. Let's just go digital. I mean, all this stuff could be avoided if you could just log on to like your citizen
Yeah,
portal and vote that
yeah,
way. It'd be so much easier. And the Republican Party really could spearhead that, especially if so many Republicans now think that the game is rigged, because that's what Trump is saying.
yeah. I think
Energy
yeah,
independence
another big one.
is another
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I think these are it's like you could almost just open up the the Andrew Yang policy page and
Hmm.
90% of it just adopt that, and you have a perfect populist platform to run on.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think if man if I think if the Republican Party just manages to get younger, right? If they can secure more people that are their 30s and 40s and 50s, and not just be the party of old white dudes for the most part. Not to
Hmm.
say that there definitely are older conservatives as well that are from different minority backgrounds. If they can just back away from being the white guy party, it'll be huge. There was what was her name? Kim Klacich. You know who I'm talking about? She
Not
was
sure
that
now.
black she was that black chick for I forget what state, but she was a conservative running as a basically saying that to Democrats black lives don't matter. She lost her race, but I mean, if she was a really good candidate, and I don't expect her to disappear from politics anytime soon because she's basically
Uh-huh.
the Republican AOC.
Uh-huh. Wow. That's cool. I'll have to check her out. Of course, the Second Amendment, something big that Republicans, the new Republican Party has to keep as one of its positions. Um, and
But like,
patriotism.
yeah, but
When the Democrats are tearing down statues, Republicans need to defend
yeah,
those statues, defend the flag.
yeah. Yeah. I think if we can back up to the Second Amendment for a second, I think all you have to do is maintain the status quo. Like, you don't really have to change
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, exactly. I
Like,
didn't really have to mention that even. I'm just looking at the list I have here.
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. There is definitely
Um,
no opportunity for a Republican to run on an assault rifle ban, right? Like that's impossible. It cannot win.
mhm.
Yeah, you definitely. I mean, you could be a Republican and run on pro-choice, but motherfucker, you better not run as anti-gun.
Right, right. That's a big deal. Um, all right, and what's next? Any other points?
Um, talk about just briefly some other big wins. We had big wins from Tuesday. We had Arizona, South Dakota, Montana, New Jersey. They voted to legalize marijuana. Oregon, they
Hmm.
they approved or voted to allow psilocybin for medicinal use. They also voted to, like, I think, decriminalize all drugs, which is major. Um,
Yeah.
in
Wow.
in California, the folks over there, they voted no on Prop 22, which will continue for um, companies like Lyft and Uber to consider the people that work for them as contractors and not employees. That narrowly passed, by the way, or narrowly it was voted against, I should say, rather. And then, yes, and in California, they voted yes on Prop 24, which that was about internet privacy and what companies can do with your data. So there was
Hmm.
a lot of big things that happened on Tuesday besides the presidential election that were great
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
country.
yeah. I think DC also voted for legalized psilocybin, um, basically magic mushrooms. But yeah, very interesting times. Um, we had let's see, Corey Gardner out of Colorado was defeated by John
Yep.
Hickenlooper. We mentioned him in our last
Mhm.
podcast. Um, Martha McSally was defeated by astronaut Mark Kelly.
Yeah.
Guy's actually a NASA astronaut, which is pretty cool. And he's also the husband of the former Representative Gabrielle Giffords. She was the
Yep.
one who must have been like 10 years ago. She was in that horrible shooting. So
Hmm.
now her husband is now an incoming senator. And the Republicans took back a seat in Alabama, which was kind of expected to go back Republican. Alabama is a very red state. But what happened was this particular seat was held by Doug Jones, who defeated Judge Roy Moore a few
Oh
years
yeah.
ago. That was the guy who was basically he was diddling kids and he got caught. And the people of Alabama have said we can't have a kid diddler, so they actually voted for the Democrat. But they just threw him out, and now they have another Republican coming in. And this new guy, Tommy Tuberville, he's actually a retired college football coach. He coached at some pretty big schools, Auburn, Texas Tech, universities of Mississippi and Cincinnati. So that guy's now a senator. I think we mentioned Georgia. Did we go through that? Not
I'm not
sure.
sure.
So basically, um, the way things are shaping out to be right now, the Republicans are going to have a slight edge in the Senate, but there are 2 Senate seats that are going to a runoff, and they both happen to be in Georgia. One of them was a special election, and because usually you don't have two Senate elections within the same state at the same time. It's a very rare thing, but neither incumbent Republican was able to get 50% or more of the vote. So they are, and for one of those seats, there was a libertarian that got like 2%, and that kind of took away the incumbent uh, uh, Purdue. I forget his first name. Um, he wasn't able to get over 50%, so that's going to a runoff. And the other election, there was like 4 people running, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. It was pretty split. And now the top 2 contenders for each seat are squaring off in January for a special election. And basically, I've seen all over Twitter people talking about moving to Georgia to help out the campaign. I know that's what Andrew Yang is doing, and there's a bunch of people going over. We're going to be hearing nothing but Georgia, Georgia, Georgia for the next few months up until January. It's basically becoming the center of the political universe. And I'm actually hoping, despite how I feel about Mitch McConnell, I cannot stand that guy. I kind of hope the Republicans can maintain their majority in the Senate to basically be a check against the Democrats. And, I want the 2 parties to work together and compromise.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Absolutely, 100%. One thing that's interesting about Georgia is that if you do move there, there is no length of residency required before you can register to vote. So day one, if you move to Georgia, you can go register to vote.
Yeah. That's, I don't like that, to be
It's
honest
weird,
with you.
right?
Yeah. I mean, because look at it this way. So theoretically, you could have just voted. I could have voted here in Texas for John Cornyn for Senate, and then I could move to Georgia and vote for Sonny Perdue. I was looking for his name before. I just remembered. And technically, I would be voting twice for somebody to serve in this next Senate, right? When the Senate,
Right.
when
Yeah.
the new Senate takes over in January. I mean, it's 2 different states, but I mean, you shouldn't get to vote for senator twice. That doesn't seem right to me.
Right. And so, like, I mean, I wonder how they check on that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, do you just have to have an address? Do you have to have a utility bill? Is it a paycheck? Like, how do they determine whether or not you're an actual resident of Georgia? Because, like, if I just get like an Airbnb, hang out there for a while, and
Yeah.
am I considered a Georgia resident at that point?
Yeah. That needs to be definitely looked into. And I mean, there's a chance that, they've just never had this situation. And,
Yeah.
there was never really that much of a need to have, a specific rule about that. But I don't know, just ethically, it just doesn't sound right to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you wanted to get like super dirty, do some like down and dirty politics, that's what you do right there. You get a whole Democratic coalition. You move to Georgia for a day. You overthrow their government and then head back home afterwards. Right.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I could see it though. I could see a lot of people, especially with the climate that we have right now. There's a lot of people who think that politics, this ongoing war between the Republicans and Democrats is really a good versus evil type thing. I could see a lot of people, especially being unemployed right now with the pandemic, saying, "Screw it, I'm going to move to Georgia for a little bit and try to help the Democrats." I could see it happening. And then that will further just just erode our trust in the democratic process. You know,
Yeah, shit. I guess you
Trump
could
will
just
be able to say, "Look at Georgia."
right. Yeah. What if you just like lived in Georgia for a day and then then elect to do a vote by mail or absentee ballot? Like, I wonder if that could work too. Like you could just vote from home anyway. I'm
Right.
yeah. This is some fucking tinfoil hat bullshit, but yeah, I guess yeah.
Yeah.
Like the potential exists. Like to what extent? Who fucking knows? Probably not much at all. But yeah, you could if you were really committed. Yeah, you could do it, I guess. But I can see Andrew Yang.
Hmm.
He's moving. He said he's moving there. And does
Yeah.
that mean
Right.
he
Right.
personally is going to participate in the election? I don't know, but yeah, if you got the cash to move there, you
Mhm.
could.
Right. uh, yeah. Wild. Um. And what else? Did we talk about the future of Donald Trump at all?
Oh, we did just briefly. We talked about
Real
yeah, we
briefly.
talked about what if he decides not to leave office and kind of pretend he's still the president and hold rallies and how many thousands of people would show up. But yeah, let's get back into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I guess
So,
I'll go ahead. You start off.
well, yeah. I think he's going to continue to rally. I mean, that's what he loves to do, and he's just going to, further sow distrust in our system. He's going to basically talk badly about the FBI and every other institution that we have, and he's really going to do a lot of good work for the Russians, basically, and because they want people here not to trust the system, and Trump is going to be saying, "Don't trust the system. They rigged it against us. They stole the election from us." He's already saying that, and I think. Yeah, that's right. We did go into this, but I think it's going to be a real challenge for the Republican Party to distance themselves from him because he's going to hold on to so much support. His numbers, he grew the vote for him by 12.5%. That's a big jump from 2016. Just wasn't enough because Joe Biden, grew the Democrat vote even more. So put it in perspective, and I have some numbers here. Hang on, bear with me. In 2008, Barack Obama won about 69.5 million votes. This is the popular vote. And that shrunk. His reelection bid in 2012, he actually lost votes. 4 million less people voted for him for his reelection in 2012. So Donald Trump running for reelection, he didn't lose any votes. He grew his votes. He went from almost 63 million to so far he's almost at 71 million. I have. And votes are still coming in. I mean, we're almost done counting, but not all the way yet. So, there is this argument that Trump did everything right. It just went against him anyway in the end. He was able to bring in 12% more people. I mean, that there is something to be said about that.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's I think it's pretty rare actually for a sitting president to grow their base come reelection. So yeah, that's huge. And
Well, George Bush. I didn't go past George Bush, but in 2004, he actually grew his share of the vote by almost 23%.
oh, you're right. Yeah, you're
He
totally
actually
right. Yeah,
he had a very big jump.
I forgot about that. But that was on the heels of the war on terror and September 11th. So yeah,
Yeah.
that it really made sense
Mhm.
back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really like shortly after his reelection, people started hating him.
Yeah.
They got tired of the war, fatigue set
Yeah.
in, and it was kind of downhill for his popularity from
Well,
there.
um,
All right, where should we go from
I don't
here?
know, man. I think that might be it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. And I guess we'll be back next week.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Be sure
Don't
to
forget to like,
like,
share,
dislike,
subscribe.
dislike.
Yeah.
But yeah, sharing. If you really enjoy our content, want to help us the most, please share us on social media, whatever platform is your favorite. That would we would appreciate the hell out of it. And
Mhm.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everybody.